good evening. Do not attempt to adjust your radio. There is nothing wrong.
We have taken control as to bring you this special show. We will return it to you as soon as you are grooving.
Welcome to the Crow's Nest Podcast, flagship podcast of the Crow's Nest Podcast Network.
Better known as CMPN, or deeper still, the Podcast Connection.
Home of the extraterrestrial brothers.
Dealers of funky podcasts.
Pod funk.
Uncut funk. The
This
bomb.
should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area. Play this record as frequently as possible. Then, as it becomes easier for you, play the record once a day or as needed.
Welcome to the Crow's Nest, the Kellogg's variety pack of podcasts. I'm your host, Kenny Stapler, joined tonight by...
What's up? It's Paulie, baby.
Boy Che.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
And tonight's special guest, Bobby Wasabi. Welcome back, Bobby.
What's happening, yo? It feels like it's been forever since I've been here.
This facts. The last episode we put out of the Crow's Nest was back in January, and you are our guest on that show as well. But you're a member of this family, so it is no surprise that you are here again. And also, a very important voice in the conversation that we're about to have tonight. So as we kind of already outlined on the Pillaging Podcast, and I know a lot of you come here from there, so I will reset that a little bit. And also for all of our exclusive listeners that listen only to the show, we touched on a little bit, you know, in terms of the Raiders organization and what we talk about on that show. The Raiders have always led with their actions in terms of Black Lives Matter and people of color, as well as women, by employing Amy Trask, Tom Flores, Art Shell, so on and so forth. So, you know, we thought it was important to let you guys know that we do stand with the movement 100%, but we wanted to keep the discussion on that show football related. It is a sports show. Sports are escapism. It's a way to get away from a lot of things that are going on in the world. Even if you do agree with those things, we all need a break here and there because there's a lot going on in the world right now. We know people are stressed out. It's a very strange time that we're living in. But here on the Crow's Nest is a bit more of an open forum. We've told you in the past we're going to keep it apolitical on this show, but this is just a topic that resonates too deeply with everybody involved here and a lot of people that are listening that it would be irresponsible to not discuss this with our friends here. And we're happy to have a forum to bring you guys in on it too and share this a little bit. So those of you guys that are tuning in to this on YouTube or on the podcast stream, you might notice that the logo is a little bit different. This is a different show. If this is not something that you want to listen to, respectfully turn off the episode now. We won't be offended by that. We understand that we live in America. Everybody has choices. You have these freedoms to do so. But if it's not something you agree with, hey, I respect that as well. I understand that when we talk about these things, everyone's going to have to come to the table, and that includes you. But if you're not comfortable doing that right now, by all means, please turn off the episode. But if you're interested, please stay on there. We just want to keep the conversation positive. We don't want it to be hateful. So again, if you disagree, we ask that you keep those hateful thoughts and comments to yourselves. You have a forum for that as well. We just want to try to keep this positive, just like we feel like this movement needs to be positive and peaceful as well. So let's get started, guys. First of all, how's everyone doing tonight? It's been a while. I've seen all you guys recently, but it's been a while since we've come together in this forum. Paulie, let's start with you, man. You're a voice our listeners haven't heard from in a while. Lots gone on in your life. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, sorry about the audio of this 1/8 inch, man. It's like not connecting here, but you know, all things considered, things are going pretty well for me. Graduated community college and going to be going to university later this year. I don't know what that's going to look like, if it's going to be more like this or I heard that they said that people could return to school. So on one hand, I really would like that in-person experience for sure, but you know, I want to be safe too. And you know me, I've kind of been like cautious, but we've gone out and we've done some things, so trying to be balanced, careful, but also doing what needs to be done in these times. But yeah, things are pretty good.
Respect. Bobby, how you feeling right now, man? Coming off first podcast, going to the second one. Is your birthday this past weekend? Last week.
Happy birthday to you.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was, man. If anything, actually, the family kept it going. We had a celebration just the other day because I have my family here, and then I have my family in Salinas. My two moms, I say. It's my mom in Salinas, and then my stepmom here. But she's my mom, man. She raised me, so
that's cool.
That's my mom right there. So I had it was pretty awesome, man. Being able to hang out with everybody and just having a good time. So
what was your birthday meal? What was the one food item that you requested from the family be made? Everyone's got one, bro.
It's funny is that I always request this, especially from my mom's, my mom in Salinas, and she gets down. Both my moms get down, in the kitchen, and they always ask me like, what is it that I want? And I always ask them. I'm basic as hell. I always tell them I want some chorizo con frijoles, just some beans and chorizo, bro, and some freshly made, like handmade tortillas. Shit, dude, that's the best for me, dog. That's what you call the bee's knees right there, bro. So that's what I always request, and my mom knows what's up. They know I'm simple like that, but they still always make something fancy for me, something nice. Last time they made a whole turkey dinner for me just out of nowhere because they know I like Thanksgiving.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. That's special, man.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to the show. Another year older, another year wiser, Mr. Wasabi, right here. Wasabi gets better.
Roberto Wasabo.
That's right. See, I'm more mature now, bro. I had to update the name now.
Yeah, where's the bow tie? Looking like Tucker Carlson up in this.
No, see, that's why I took off the hat, bro. That's why I took off the hat. See, because it's no longer Bobby, because that was Bobby. Now it's, like Che said, dog, it's Roberto Wasabo. So now you got to show off the hair. I got the peine.
It's your daddy, Roberto.
Che, welcome back. Long time no see. You're feeling good. You're feeling good.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys already know what I drank last episode. We just got off that shit, so I'm feeling really good right now.
Let's start with you, man, because this seems to be a natural jumping off point. Paulie and myself, we went to a protest event yesterday in San Jose. I know you attended one in Hollister. The reason why I want to start with you is I was live streaming that event, and one of the commenters on the scope, he was saying that he participated in an event the day before on Friday. He's a small town, and it was a small turnout. And he was kind of like, I think he might have even put the sad face emoji. And I kind of stopped him. I said, you know what? This is a worldwide movement that you're seeing mostly in metro areas. The small towns have a lot of differences in politics. There's a lot of different things that go on in small towns in America. It's just a different feel. It's a different vibe. And I let them know the fact that you guys did anything is a really great sign for this movement. It doesn't matter if 5 people turned out or 5,000 people turned out. There was people that were there and that were brave enough, right? Small towns, everybody knows everybody. You might have went to high school with the mayor of your town, and that's not a joke. And so I feel like tensions are a little bit higher sometimes in those smaller towns, because when you participate in something like this, you're really putting all your cards on the table. So going on to you, who you live in San Benito County, which is a very interesting county. The dynamics there are really unique. You have a lot of folks of color. You have migrant, you have new generation, and then you have old money in Hollister as well. And the politics in Hollister is something like maybe we do or don't get into, but I'll just go ahead and say, like, it's an agricultural town, it's a farming town, and with that comes a lot of almost contradictions, if you will, being that it's also in California and hanging on to a sliver of the Bay Area, if you will. So what was the vibe like down there? What's Hollister looking like, and how are the people, and what did you see in terms of numbers?
Oh man, well, first of all, I'm saddened by the fact that I wasn't able to be part of the whole thing. So I got there midway through the actual march and protest, but the numbers were were awesome, man. I mean, I gotta applaud people of Hollister, and I especially gotta applaud the young people, the young kids that took a stand, that wanted to speak up for what they thought was right. Because we saw a lot of youth. This was a youth movement. It was actually youth led, and it was youth organized, man. So appreciation goes out to those kids because they are. I mean, it's been said for years and years and years. The youth are the future, but these kids really are the future, and not just in terms of the fact that they will eventually become old heads like us, but they are the progressive minds that will take us into the future, and they will get us where we should be, because no matter how hard we've tried, we haven't gotten there. So I appreciate all those young kids, all those high school kids, all those college kids that came out to the protest, to the march. It was all positive, man. It was nothing but peaceful and just love. And I was very, very pleased with that because as you mentioned, San Benito is a tricky county to live in, and Hollister in itself is not necessarily for everything. Let's just say that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of yes, money. There's a lot of money behind certain interests, and so there's a lot of people that can interrupt and cause conflict when it comes to these situations. We saw it. There was a lot of it showcased in the form of social media, as Bobby mentioned earlier when we were just talking off the air. There's a lot of keyboard warriors when it comes to these situations, when it comes to these types of things. Yeah, they're the Screen Berets, bro. They come out in abundance, right? They really want to say what they got to say, though they won't say it to your face, right? And so we saw a lot of that. There was a lot of attacks. There was a lot of saying. There's a lot of complaints. I had the pleasure of actually speaking to the mayor, and he mentioned that. He mentioned that there was a lot of people that called his office, complained, asked him, pleaded with him to put a stop to the protest, to the march. And thankfully, he wasn't convinced. Thankfully, he backed it, and thankfully, he said, "This has to have a voice, and this needs a place in our community." And he was out there. So I give him props for that, for being part of the protest, taking part in the festivities, if you will, and letting it be known where he stands in this situation. It was beautiful, man. It was a really beautiful thing. We had the Aztec dancers out there, and it really showed across the town. There is no racial differential. There was white people, brown people, black people.
That's good to see.
We were all united. We were all united, man.
Did you have any anti-protesters show up out there? Was there anybody trying to start funk out there?
That was probably the shocker, man, is that there wasn't. For my existence in Hollister, whenever there's been a beef about certain things, there's always been a pro and a con, right? There's always been protesters for, protesters against in certain situations. And so I actually thought we were going to see some. I did. I thought when I got down there was definitely going to be some people out there voicing their opinion, voicing their displeasure with the event, and there was actually nobody to be seen. My lady, she actually said that throughout the march, because she got a chance to participate from the beginning. She was actually involved in organizing a community mural, which a lot of people took part in. And so she had to be out there from the beginning. I had to stay at home for a little while until we got childcare. But she was out there, and she said as she was marching, it was actually beautiful to see that walking down Main Street, a lot of people actually came out of their homes in support, even though they weren't part of the march. They were cheering people on. There was people in tears, in happy tears, people bringing out their children to show them what was going on and explain to them the reasons why people were marching. And I think that's a thing of beauty, man. That's the power of protest. That's the power of marches. Mm-hmm. That is what they were designed to do. It wasn't something to disrupt. It was something to educate, to inform, and to give people a reason why. Like, there shouldn't be any dispute about this. People want equality for other human beings. How is that wrong? How is that something wrong? How is that something you could be against? And so to hear that was happening within my community, it uplifts me, man, because I've lived in this community for the majority of my life, with exception for a few years where I lived down south in San Diego and I had a good time. But this has been my home for the majority of my life, and that hasn't always been the case. And I haven't always felt that unity. I haven't always felt accepted. So to hear that is a change that is actually going on within the community, because I think those opposition voices were a lot stronger back in the days. Right. Something like this wouldn't be able to take place in the 90s or 80s. This wouldn't have gone off the way that it did in 2020.
Let me ask you something, Che. Like, let me ask you something, brother. Like, you said that there was people online, like, of course, again, hiding behind the keyboard. They're voicing their opinions, but they didn't show out. Do you think that it has something to do with the fact that people are filming everything all the time, and you have to be willing to, like, maybe be on, like, Twitter,
expose yourself,
right?
Yeah,
because there's some people who don't care. They're so racist, bro. They don't care that they're being recorded, right? There's people that are just nuts, but a lot of people try to be covert.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that has to have some play in it, right? Because social media is the new news, bro. Like, that exposes everything, and every community has its own page. Like, there's its own page. But I have to say this: there is a Hollister page on Facebook, a Hollister community on Facebook, and I don't know who the moderator is, but there were some issues where people threatened. There was people that came out and they were saying some racist things, some very derogatory things, very hateful things towards the people that actually organized this event. And when the event organizers complained to the Facebook moderator for the Hollister page, the moderator turned around and banned them. So instead of doing the right thing and banning the people that were spreading hatred and that were actually posting these negative comments in regards to the protests and the march, the actual people that were trying to promote peace and unity were banned. So it's not all the way correct, right? We're not 100% there yet. But like you said, I don't think anybody really wants to showcase who they are. They hide because that's easy, because they don't have to actually see you in your face and say the things that they think and the things that they feel. But that happened, man. That's the reality of the little town, the little community that we live in, which is slowly changing. But as far as the event goes, it went off beautifully, and we had an abundance of community leaders out there as well. The principal of our high school, who just so happens to be my cousin, uh, he was out there with his family. And so we need leaders within our community, whether it be the mayor, a council member. We need those people to be part of the movement in order to make those changes, in order to enforce the fact that things aren't right and things need to change, things need to improve. And whoever's in opposition of those ideals, they need to change, or they need to find another place, because that shit should not exist anymore, man. We're in 2020. This isn't the fucking 50s, the 40s, the 30s, the 20s. And racism has existed from then, beyond before then, till now. But it shouldn't have. There's a lot of people that stood up and fought for freedoms, for equality, for existence. Just give us the liberties to be here, to have an opportunity to succeed, to make a life for ourselves. We're not asking you to give us no handouts. Nobody's ever asked you for a handout. A lot of people fought for that. Somehow, some way, systematically, we've always been oppressed. Black people, brown people, and any other minority that exists within the county, state, country has seen that over and over and over again. And it's been glossed over. And people say that you exaggerate, and people ignore you, and they try to tell you that you don't, that's not true. Racism doesn't exist anymore. Yes, it does. You don't know racism because you've never encountered it. You've never had to endure it. But you want to tell me how I should deal with it. That's not your place. And so to see the things that are going on, not just in our neck of the woods, but across the nation as a whole, man, it's a beautiful thing. It brings tears to your eyes. And yes, I know that there's a lot of negativity that surrounds, that people try to place on the protests. But something drastic like this had to happen in order for there just to be consideration of change. And that tells you how wrong things were. That really tells you how wrong things were. Because if it wasn't for people taking the opportunities, or taking this kind of movement, or putting this into play, shit would remain the same. We had to be seen, we had to be heard in order for anybody to start considering, maybe I might be wrong on this situation. And I see that there's still a lot of people that deter from this, and there's also people that are open to conversation. And that's where the change exists. People that are open to discuss, to converse, and maybe have an open mind to the fact that they might be wrong in the situation. So I see this as a positive. There's some negatives, but this is overall positive, man. And I'm very happy that I've gotten a chance to take part of it, see it, and seeing more and more people united, man. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I was really interested to hear how that went down there, especially considering the politics at play in Hollister. So that's really good news to hear that the mayor, let it go. There should be no protest against racism. There's no discussion there. There's no argument there. Racism's bad. If you have a problem with it, I think the answer you need to seek is somewhere inside yourself. Now, Paulie, you and I got to go out to San Jose yesterday for one of the protests that have been going on nearly every day since this began. We will talk a little bit about how this protest, this movement has already evolved in the last 10 days and how the mood has changed and shifted and sort of settled in. I do want to talk about the nuances in that and some of the reasons for that and my opinions on that stuff. But overall, man, just break it down for me. How was your experience yesterday and how did you feel? What did you take away from it?
Well, it was nice to have a buddy that lived right next to City Hall and to the university, because it really helped out. It's good seeing some folks that we knew already out there showing support. But after we met up, we went to San Jose State, and they had some people that were congregated at the what are those statues called again? I'm sorry, brother. The Olympians, the
victory statue.
What's that?
The victory statue. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people spoke on their experiences. The organizers of that rally, like that was a rally, really, right? And they were all young, you know, early 20s, and they just spoke on their experiences. They gave a little bit of their brief history on racism and how it's been perpetuated in, again, covert ways. And it was just really touching to just, you know, I mean, it's obviously a hard thing to hear about these people's experiences, but just to be there and just to just be quiet and just listen, you know, there was something to that I hadn't really experienced before, because I'll admit, I think that I could, with the way that I've felt, I could have probably aligned how I was feeling more with action, you know, and to be there and to hear this raw take from people that are experiencing life in a totally different and just almost incomprehensible way for me, just giving myself to that fully, you know, and trying to apply myself. That was a good feeling. And the actual protest out there in front of City Hall was cool too. You know, there wasn't as many people out there, I think, as the day before, but it was a lot of people, and it was just good energy. And it was just a great experience. And it's something that, you know, I needed to be a part of. Like, you know, when your feelings and your actions don't line up, you know, it can cause a lot of cognitive dissonance. And that's what I felt like I was feeling. And I want to continue to go out, because it feels right. You know, it's like one of those things, you know, and throughout life we're living our lives and we're making choices, and there's those times when you're like, yeah, this is what, like, the deepest core of me, like, this is what I feel like I should be doing. This is where I should be. And I think a lot of other people are doing that too, that maybe should have been a little bit more active in construing their feelings into actions. And that's what's great. That's why you're seeing such a large movement, you know, all 50 states in the United States and 18 countries. That was like a couple of days ago, I saw something that said that are marching for this. It's the biggest civil rights movement ever that we've ever known of, you know. So if you're not in it, you know, if you're not called to action, if you're not spurned to like go and be a part of it, and because there's really no like gray area anymore, you know what I mean? That's what it seems like. That's what the paradigm shift that I'm seeing is. There really isn't a gray area anymore. Like Angela Davis said it, you know, you can't just be like non-racist, you have to be anti-racist, right?
And it's to that point too, because I had a conversation with a family member yesterday, and I was getting frustrated, so I had to walk away. I feel like we have two choices. You could either walk away from people that are spewing negativity and leave that alone. That's my responsibility to do so, or educate. And so at the moment I chose to walk away until I could calm down and come back and try to educate my brother. Not my brother, my cousin. I don't want to get that confused. But what you said about that, Angela Davis, very powerful leader in our time and prior to us being here. I mean, she was really active in the 60s. She's currently part of the staff over at UC Santa Cruz. What she said, and it's something that my cousin said, was like, he was like, well, I don't see color. And that's a problem. That's a problem. You can't enter into this. We can't move forward from this if we're out there saying, well, I don't have a problem. I'm not racist. I don't see color. You have to see color, because if you're not seeing color, you're not taking time to appreciate the beautiful differences and the different cultures that we have out there. If I'm not respecting your color, your culture, and I'm not seeing your color, then I'm really not seeing who you are as a person, you know. And so we have to celebrate the differences between each other. We don't have to rally against them, though, or be afraid of them. And another phrase you use, cognitive dissonance. A lot of people asking me, well, what good is this going to do? Not asking me, but asking in general, well, what good is this going to do? Like, you know, marching doesn't never caused anything to change. It does. It creates cognitive dissonance. That's that uncomfortable moment in your brain where things aren't really lining up right. And that's when growth happens. That's what causes you to rethink and reconsider and evolve and reevaluate your stance on things. It starts with cognitive dissonance. And how do you get there? By raising awareness and showing that there are issues and there are problems. And sometimes you got to make a little bit of noise for that to happen. In terms of the riots and the looting that have happened, not to minimize it, people have lost their lives over this. With every revolution comes turbulence and noise on the fringes of things. We're all responsible for it on both sides of that. We're responsible for our brothers and sisters that are causing that sort of noise and violence and confusion. And it's going to happen. You know, that we've been losing lives up until now. You know, that's not changing. So this is, I don't like to use the term war, but this is a battle that's being fought. And people are going to get hurt. And I hate to say that. And I hate to even have to accept that. But that's what's going on right now. Bobby, you live out there in Watsonville. I understand you attended an event recently too. Watsonville, another small town. You know, all four of us here are from small towns. What was the vibe like in your city? What seems to be the general consensus out there? How are people feeling? How was your event? What did that feel like?
What's awesome is that it's definitely put a lot more people, like Ches said, on the same page, on the same level. I was one of those type of people that when the election went down, when dude got you know, quote unquote elected into office, I was one of those type of people. I said, well, silver lining is that now people are going to put their bullshit to the side and they're going to start paying attention to the real issues at hand. It's so sad and unfortunate that it took, you know, this long for people to actually put away their bullshit and to realize that we're all on the same page, that we all need to be on the same thing, man. So it's definitely nice seeing that, man. And especially in Watsonville, we've always had a history of people just being cautious, man, and just knowing their rights. I mean, you know, my parents were in the cannery strikes of '85. I still got that newspaper clipping where they're all flipping off all the scabs as they're rolling in. My pop still has those weights in his toolbox. You know, RIP. My mom has that now, but has all those weights that they used to toss at the windows of the blacked out school buses so that nobody could see the scabs, so that way they could follow those assholes. So Watsonville definitely has that rich history of people, and it's not just the workers themselves. Their students have gone out there as well. Teachers have gotten in trouble for supporting the people, man. So it's definitely nice. One of the things that really upset me was that there was this whole chisme going on, this whole rumor about, oh, they're going to start, you know, rioting and people are going to start, you know, breaking into businesses and all this looting. And people actually took this to heart, man. People actually thought that something was going to happen here in our small town. And I kid you not, up and down, you go up and down Main Street, all these businesses are all boarded up. It looks like, you know, it's one of the other areas where there's stuff going on, where stuff is walling out. And the entire week that there's been demonstrations here, peaceful demonstrations, that's what's been happening, peaceful demonstrations. Everyone's been cool, man. Everyone's been out there. You know, the police are you know, basically escorting the people to make sure that nobody gets hurt. Everybody's on the same page, man. Nobody's wilding out, nobody's freaking out. So when this happened, it really upset me. And like I said, man, it definitely put people on point right there, man, because the one thing that out of this whole thing, and I'm glad Polly brought it up, was listening. And people finally listen. They're like, wait, what? Agitators are going to come to our community and start harassing our peoples here, like the stuff that, and it's not to say that, oh my God, Target, you know, it's like this great, you know, company here that you know, cares for the community. You know, Target's a big corporation, man, but we're not going to let outside agitators come in here and start breaking shit, you know, because it could start here and then all of a sudden it starts leaking everywhere, dude. We're not going to let that happen. If it's going to be something internal that we feel the need to, like, hey, look, we need to be heard and we have to make this sort of demonstration to be heard, then that's within us, man. But to have other people come into your neighborhood, into your community, and to start BS like that, that wasn't going to happen here. And what was awesome is that where it was rumored to all this, stuff to pop off or whatever, what did the community do? All the cats with the lowriders pulled up to the parking lot, and they had just a giant lowrider show, just a giant car show. Why? Because you got to offer something, man. And that's the one thing that we've always said here in this community. Anybody could bitch and moan, but what do you have to offer? What's your solution? Only children bitch and moan, dude. Unless you have something to offer, dude, how are you any different than everybody else that's complaining? Give me a solution, man. Come bring something to the table, even if it's not completely right. Let's work with that solution. Let's do something. And so that's what the people did here, man. People were like, you know what? We're not going to allow anything to pop off. So people started, pulling up and started doing a car show. People were cruising up and down, just, keeping an eye on everything. The cops knew what was up, and they didn't trip on anybody there because they knew who the community was. And that's what was nice, man, is that people were finally paying attention, man. And I've said this many, many times. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we talk, because unfortunately, for a lot of people, they love to talk. They love to hear themselves, and that's all they want to do. Question time. Oh, well, I and me and this and that. Okay, so what was the question? Oh, well, there was no question. It was just about me, and that's the problem, is that nobody's paying attention, man. So it's awesome seeing that the spirit of Watsonville still here, man. That we still have that knowledge of people saying that, we have to be better than that. We have to start paying attention, man. So it's been a beautiful thing, man. This whole week we've had great demonstrations. Everyone's been out there. Everyone's, said their piece. And for the most part, we have not had any sort of incidents at all. Just, people looking at each other weird, but that's about it. Nothing popping off here, thankfully.
Yeah, about the violence and stuff that's been happening. I want to go into that a little bit because, I think all 4 of us shared our experiences over the last couple of days, and not one incident of violence popped off in any of those, despite threats that came in ahead of time. And I just wanted to point out a couple of the patterns that I've seen. First of all, let's address last Friday and Saturday, the first 2 nights of the protesting of the movement. You saw a lot of that. You saw a lot of chaos. You saw a lot of confusion. You saw violence. Rest in peace to David Dorn, unfortunately, who lost his life protecting his store, doing his job, former police officer. I know the right is trying to use him, and the left, I don't want to say the right and the left, but those that are allies of the movement, our heart goes out to him just as well. You're not going to weaponize his death against us. That's really inappropriate. But the pattern I want to point out is, first of all, in those first 2 nights, you have this pressure cooker that has been cooking for 4 centuries. When that lid finally popped off, people got burnt, and that's exactly what happened. Chaos ensues, and there's a lot of pressure that was rising there, and it was bound to blow, and that's what happened. After the first couple of days, obviously, you saw curfews go into effect. You saw the National Guard out in some cities. A lot of that was to scare away the looters and the violence and the looters and the violence and the rioters. Unfortunately, they stayed put because they tried lumping the protesters into that same group. But it's 2 very different groups, and it might even be more than that when you start getting into the provocateurs and stuff, which we don't have to get into all of that. But I did notice a pattern. On Thursday morning, San Jose lifted their curfew. Washington, D.C. lifted their curfew. I believe it was on Friday. We have cities around now that are lifting their curfews, pulling military presence out of towns. And as a result, you are seeing less and less acts of violence. Just go look it up. #BlueFall. #BlueFall. Look that up, and you will be shocked at the amount of violence instigated by the police forces that are pushing protesters out because of curfew. And you can hear it on the loudspeakers. Curfew is now in effect. This is now an unlawful protest. Please exit through the north, or it depends on the different cities. Police will use force if you do not clear the area. Now that there's no curfew, there's no reason for that message. There's no reason for that action. On Thursday night, I saw Washington, D.C., a group of protesters circling the Lincoln Memorial until about 2 o'clock in the morning out there. An absolute peace. They were chanting. They were singing. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. You take the cops out of the equation, and you've taken the violence out of the equation as well. And before you jump on my case and say, well, not all cops are bad cops, I agree with you. most cops that I've met, that I've worked alongside with, have been pretty good, but they're also very clear in their stance of how they feel about the work that I do is in terms of intervention. And they've said it to me. They said, you guys are really just in the way. Some people deserve second chances. Most don't. We're really just looking to prosecute, charge, and incarcerate. And that's what we feel like we need to do. So here's what I'll say about good cops and bad cops. As long as good cops stand by and allow everything to happen, you're just as much as part of the problem. And I'm sorry to say that. I have friends that are cops, but you guys need to do something. This movement's not going to go anywhere until we see cops start to take action against their coworkers and start holding people accountable. Seeing precincts and the chief of police holding people accountable. We don't want people just being fired. We want charges levied. We want people prosecuted. These are crimes that they're committing, and there needs to be some sort of consistency. You know, after 400 years of oppression, we need to start to dismantle this in one shape or another. So that's what I wanted to say. No curfew, no cops, no violence, no coincidence. Polly, did you see a single police officer yesterday?
Not besides those ones that were ripping down Julian when we were just getting into town, which
Right.
They were addressing just some, I guess, regular crime, which,
Yeah.
I say that, not having anything to do with like protests or riots, but, saying that, like, I didn't see any cops besides those, but I've been thinking about this thing that they're doing in Minneapolis now, right? Have you heard about how they voted? It's like a veto proof approval from their council that they're going to dismantle that police force in Minneapolis.
Right.
And,
Which has been done before with success in other places, right?
right. So like saying, regular crime, like, so those cops that we saw, they were going to take care of something. There is crime. Okay. So this isn't, it obviously isn't simple. I don't think anybody ever said it was, but this excessive force, that culture, it's not going to be stood for anymore. People aren't going to stand for that. And if they put together something that's a nice working model, where you have others, like people with other specialities showing up to situations, and if you make sure that the officers are wearing body cams, that it's, there's harsh punishments for your body cam malfunctioning or whatever, right? And that should be being controlled by somebody else anyways, like you have operators taking dispatch calls and stuff. There should be a video dispatcher or somebody that's their job, that to keep an eye on that, make sure everything's working in good order. So I think that is something, you have people in the council that are doing the right thing. Like you just said, you're calling on officers that don't believe in this, but you get caught. I guess the only thing I could say is I can understand you get caught in this lifestyle now. This is your people, and if it's bigger than you, it's difficult, I'm sure, to try to buck something that is an ancient way of thinking that's been there, and you're but one person, right? But yeah, like it's but one person and then another person, like anything else. And also, we got to hope that people are, have those moments of coming to doing what is the right thing to do, regardless of what they're being told to do. High ranking military people refusing to deploy, military personnel on the citizens of the United States. It's going to take people doing the right thing at all sorts of levels, right? All from the bottom all the way up. You start squeezing, from one side or the other, it's putting pressure on people. I'm glad that these policy changes are being made because they're necessary. But like you said, what did it take for that to start happening? I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on these new proposals for policing a city like Minneapolis is trying to do. What does anybody else know about basically the logistics of it?
one thing I want to say about it, I think it's a brave move that Minneapolis is taking this step, because it's going to take wide sweeping changes to counteract the systematic oppression that we've been seeing for centuries. It started off with them wanting to outlaw carotid holds. And I saw a lot of people were really excited about that. I wasn't. I understand 100% completely that is a slippery slope, because what happens when you start outlawing carotid holds? They're going to lean on other methods. They might go to start using their guns more. If I can't choke you out, I'll shoot you. You know what I mean? So, but when you start talking about dismantling an entire police force, those are the type of wide sweeping changes that we need. Not only do we need body cams on our officers, but maybe it's time that some of us as citizens have to wear them as well. If they're not going to hold themselves accountable, because most police forces, including San Jose, are mandated to wear body cams. It just seems so unfortunate that when these events happen, for one reason or another, body cams are turned off or they're malfunctioning for whatever reason. We never seem to get an explanation on that.
And the whole idea behind these body cams was to prevent those type of things from happening. The idea was that the officer was going to have a camera there available to document the entire thing that went down. And like you guys said, how unfortunate is it that those cameras just don't happen to work at that particular time, and we only have the officer's narrative to go on. I mean, if that was the case, how long had it had been for other cases before where it's the officer's narrative, and all of a sudden, a video starts popping out about, what's going on, what actually happened,
Yeah.
I just want to say this to all that. For the longest time, we really haven't had anybody police the police, and I think that's the biggest net we've never had. We've never had anybody police the police. Okay, the police are always right in every single situation, which is the reason why so many minorities have such a big issue with police, because we already know for a fact that the treatment we receive is not the same as everyone else. And so without anybody policing them, it doesn't matter what we say, because we're already considered a less than person. We can voice our opinion. We voiced our opinion for years, bro. We've told you there wouldn't be records like NWA. There wouldn't be F the Police out there. There wouldn't be all the generations of people telling you how they feel about law enforcement had there been somebody taking up the cause and defending us from this kind of treatment, from this kind of law and order, as the president would put it. This is how it's been for years. Nobody has told them they're wrong. It's always people of color that are in the wrong, no matter what happens. And I'm not going out there and saying that everybody's innocent, but there's a lot of people that did not get the justice they deserve. They did not get the due process they deserve.
Well, let's also remind people that nobody's ever proven innocent in a court of law. You're only proven guilty or not guilty. There's never a verdict that declares anybody to be innocent. And that's something very important to distinguish. It's written into the language and the rhetoric of our justice system. The other thing,
but even more important, bro, is getting to the court is also a privilege.
It is,
okay? Yeah. Because that's the whole purpose of this movement. These men were not given the opportunity to even get judgment within the court of law. Their lives were taken before they even reached that point.
Well, let's talk about that. In 1704, the first police force created in the South was created for one purpose, and that was to patrol slavery and to keep it intact. These systems of oppression have been baked in to our police force since the 18th century. Think about that.
I mean, listen, if you don't know by now, I don't know what history books you've been reading from, and I don't know what your education might have been, but anybody who has taken the time to get themselves educated and learn about the history of this country, the history of law enforcement, and the reasons why certain things were put in place should know by this point in time that a lot of it was made to be able to control the now freed people that existed in this country, and that is colored people. Okay. Those systems were put in place in order to legally be able to control people of color, man. Like that, let's be awake about this. Like, slavery ended, and then all these laws and restrictions and all this ability to still continue to control the same people were put into place. Prisons were put into place. The system is racist. We're talking about systemic racism. That is the truth. Now, I know there's a lot of people that like to throw out numbers and all these different statistics that they try to find to defend why that's not the case. The bottom line is that if you have a population that is less than 50%, 20% of a certain minority, but they have a rate of 40 to 50% incarceration and arrest, that should tell you how your system works. A lot of people try to throw out numbers about, well, there's more people that get killed. There's a lot more people that get arrested. But what is the population density in your county, in your city? Okay, you're ignoring certain statistics for a reason, because it allows you to feel content and feel comfortable with your situation and not feel responsible for the reason why people are being mistreated on a daily basis. That's facts.
It all ties together. We talked about the police force in 1704. Let's talk about the 13th Amendment, which was written in 1865. I have the text right here in front of me. It's very short and it's very simple to understand. 13th Amendment, as most people know, is what Lincoln signed into order that abolished slavery. Sounds like a very positive thing. It was a positive thing, except for the one major loophole that exists inside the 13th Amendment. It says here, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for crime. Slavery in America is still legal if you are a convicted criminal. And
it's big business.
Big business. The majority of our prisons in America are privatized, owned by private organizations. These prisons don't make money by sitting there empty. Labor, a lot of the labor in America comes out of our prison system, and even abroad. I mean, you go into like foreign prisons, the Chinese prison, they do a lot of labor for my town right here, Gilroy. A lot of garlic processing happens in Chinese prisons, right? So these privatized institutions have become labor camps and slave labor, making 50 cents a week, to put the little plastic things at the end of your shoelaces. That's not a job. That's glorified racism. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And you look at the demographics of the people that are in our prison system. None of this is a coincidence, guys. And I could go into it, but just do yourself a favor and go watch the 13th. It's excellent documentary on Netflix. The numbers are there. It's great. It's just great. It goes into the 13th Amendment and it breaks down the shockwaves that have been created by this all the way up until recent times. I think it goes up to maybe 2015, 2016. I'm not too sure, but do yourself a favor, do some homework and go watch that if you haven't already. I know Polly watched it recently. My girlfriend watched it on Friday. She was shocked to hear all that stuff, but slavery is alive and well, and it's tied to our justice system. And you look what the police have been doing all the way up and down this entire system. That's exactly what it is. Look at the scales of justice, right? Lady Justice. Justice is blind. She's wearing a blindfold and she's holding scales. What are the scales symbolic of? What do we use scales to measure? What do we use scales to measure? Gold. That's what those scales are there for. Anybody knows the person with the most money, you're going to do pretty well in court. Your success in the legal system is going to depend largely on your bankroll and the legal team that you have by your side. And that's just a fact. Anyone that's been through the court system, I went through a divorce. Luckily, I had, myself and my ex were willing to work through it. But ask anybody in America, how much does a divorce cost? Well, how much do you have? Because they will bleed you dry. The justice system is based on just that. It's based on money. And who doesn't have money in this America? Well, a lot of the oppressed groups, and we're looking at minorities. And here we are right back again where we started. So all these things are tied in. It's a big tangled mess, but none of it's a coincidence.
Yeah, because what does a giant corporation care about letting their free labor go, their dirt cheap labor go? And that's why you don't see no more things in there as people getting paroled as easily, and more importantly, that's why you don't see no more things as vocational training. Like you actually don't see no more education in there anymore, the way it was before, the way before we were actually able to get something more than just your basic GE or whatever, your GED. You're actually able to do more, and now it's not that way because why? They're not going to do them any good, any service for the corporation. You're not going to make them any money, so there's no need for that. There's no need to actually try to invest in those people and in those prisoners. Why? Because they want them to stay there. They wanted to not go back there, not to go back out to the real world. And not only that, when they do get out to the real world, what do they go back to? They actually go back as second class citizens, man. You're all of a sudden now you have to mark that little box that says you are a felon, and now the chances of you staying that much straight or trying to fucking keep a straight life are reduced that much more, because now nobody wants to give you a shot, man, because everyone looks at you with that eye, with that suspicious eye. And it sucks because there are those people that are actually trying, man. We know those cats that are actually trying, and it kills us when we see people just totally turning their back on them and not willing to help them out, because it's like, what the hell do you guys want? Do you guys want these people to fail? It's pretty damn obvious that they do.
Yeah. I want to touch on something too, just before I forget, and then I'll turn it back over to you guys. It's been said in the chat. I think it's even been said by one of us here, is, relying on the youth and the new generation to make changes. Well, we've been saying that since the 1960s. I'm sorry, guys, but that shit's just not good enough. Don't sit back and hope for the children to change things, because there's a lot of young folks in this country with old money. And that's the problem. Barron Trump is out there. These kids are out there. You think that all the young kids out there are progressive and they're going to come out and they're going to make change. Well, that's just entirely 100% not true. Corporations which run this country, that money gets passed down. You have people in power right now that are very young. In terms of politics, what's young? I'd say even in the 40s is young for politics. Watch out for a guy named Tom Cotton. He's probably going to run for president in 2024. Everything that you don't like about Trump,
dangerous.
Except he's extremely intellectual. He's smart, and he's more well-spoken than Trump is. The guy is a well-known white supremacist. He is very much out against what's going on right now. And this is a guy that ultra-conservatives would love to see on a Republican ticket in 2024. And he's not some old 70-year-old man. I mean, he's not 25. He's no spring chicken either. But there is a lot of young folks with really old money in this country. It's going to take more than that. Encourage your children to run for local office. Prep them to become activists within their community. You have to make change. A lot of people, unfortunately, are right. The marching isn't going to change anything by itself. It does start, however, the fire. And that's what we need. But you need action. You need political action all the way up to the top level. And I'm not talking about people out there that are just doing a dance to try to steal your vote, get into office, and then flip back to everything that you're afraid of, because that's what we've seen happen too. I hate to say it, but Obama sold us down the river multiple times in office. The one good thing about Obama is he made you proud to be an American. He didn't embarrass you every time he opened his mouth. He wasn't a good ambassador for the country. But in terms of his policies and whatnot, I mean, he was in bed with the corporations as well. A lot of you out there that supported Obama, that wanted to support Bernie Sanders, you could thank Obama for torpedoing Bernie Sanders' entire campaign. Not once, but twice. Obama for change does not exist anymore. It's also gone. Be very wary of your politicians. There's a lot of people out there that are going to tell you the things that you want to hear. Is it up to our kids to change things? It absolutely is, but we need to put them in positions of power, positions that actually make a difference. Otherwise, they're just going to be right back out on the street, marching the same way that we did, because not a damn thing has changed. And I hate to say that. I hate to sound negative, but we have to do something. Be a part of the solution. Come to the table with answers. Just like Bobby said, don't just be out there. This is not a hashtag. This is not a trend. This is a way of life for people for centuries. And it's just now coming back to the forefront again. This is not the first time. This is not the first time. We made headway in the 1960s. It's time to make more. It's time to make change. It's time for revolution. Another of my big fears is this is dying down. You know, will it die down? When is it going to die down? Occupy Wall Street was a strong movement. People were shook. It lasted for 2 straight months, and then winter came, and everybody left because it gets cold on them streets. So something has to come out of these protests. I
think there's one big difference between that and this is that this is like worldwide right now. And that was one place, you know, Wall Street is one place. And so, yeah, it gets cold in New York in the winter, but we're moving into summer. And yeah, I mean, maybe some of those colder cities, you're not going to see people out there as much. You can't blame them. You know, when some of these places that are like single digit, you know, temperatures and shit, you can't expect someone to be out there at, you know, at that point. But I just wanted to kind of like get your guys' thoughts, like going back to like what to do in the future with law enforcement. Okay. Che, you mentioned the racism, and Kenny, you mentioned that people should watch the 13th, and you know everybody who watches that documentary will have a better understanding of that aspect of it. There's another aspect of police that transcends race. So you've got this white supremacy that's just embedded there, like you said, baked into the foundation of it. And then you have other races that will join a police force, and once you're a cop, you have this like fraternity, right? Now you're expected to conduct yourself a certain way. And I think that there's also something to this power that comes along with impunity, pretty much impunity, right? That doesn't matter, like if the cop is not white, or if he is white, they take on something psychologically. And of course, anybody who knows about the Stanford prison experiment, which was never replicated because of how disturbing the results ended up being, you can see that there's a dynamic there. So it's like it's multi-layered. There's the racism, and then there's this extra layer of just like power that comes along with that position. And so I guess if you have a white cop in a particular area of the country, and he's got that power, and then also that racism in his heart or her heart, that's, I mean, when you really stop and think about it, it's like, wow, no wonder they think that they can do whatever they feel like doing. And then when the result is that they're being protected, of course, that's going to perpetuate that kind of behavior. So I've heard a couple of things that you have, say like there's a 5150, instead of just sending a bunch of cops out there, it's like you send out a social worker, there's a police officer, again, the CAM, somebody that's gone through psychological evaluation before being given the job. It's only 850 hours, right, of like training to become a police officer, I read, and then it's like 1,500 hours to become a barber. Like, how does that make sense, right? So people need to be going through psychological evaluations on a regular basis. And then, I didn't even read about this, but when you were saying something, Kenny, you were talking about, you know, or somebody, who might have been Che, was like, who polices the police? It's like, what if there was an entity that was pretty much assembled for the sole purpose to be oversight for the actual police department? And then, of course, that's where you have the psychological evaluations and the checkups and all that stuff. And then this all really is contingent on having that really strong conviction about the body cams always being on and being able to reference that, because that's going to exonerate a good police officer. You know, that's going to be apparent if somebody did everything they could to de-escalate a situation and somebody put their life in danger and they had to do what they had to do, right?
Yeah.
Or beyond that, you know, you shouldn't be shooting somebody, you know, that's not armed with a firearm. They have a bunch of other, I mean, now that they're using all these rubber bullets, which are no fucking joke, why are they not, you know what I'm saying? Why can't you use a rubber bullet against somebody that is not armed? Why do you have to, you know, use actual bullets and kill somebody, you know? So, and then that comes back to whatever the motivation might be behind that. But those things would be being reviewed, right?
Yep.
And let's look at these rubber bullets, right? People think, oh, the little rubber pellets that look like little mini bullets. Nah, try taking one of these things to the face.
They've blown people's eyes out already, man.
Oh yeah, blow up your shins.
We have people that have lost eyes, people that have fucking gigantic wounds in their fucking foreheads. And my bigger question is, why are they being shot at people's faces?
Yeah.
Why is a rubber bullet being shot at head, at shoulder range, shoulder and above range? Why is that being shot that way? When my understanding is rubber bullets were designed to be shot at the ground, right, so that they ricochet first and then hit people. But I've seen all the protests, and I've seen when these rubber bullets are being shot, they're not being shot at the ground. They're being shot directly at people, in the direction of people, which is a bigger issue. Is another bigger issue, because when you take something that's supposed to be ricocheted off the floor and you point it directly at somebody, now that's a lethal weapon. Mm-hmm. That is no longer a safe mechanism to control or defend yourself. Now that is a lethal weapon. You're shooting it in the direction of the actual person when you're supposed to be bouncing that shit off the ground. And
well, this ties into what Paulie was asking, man, is that how is it like that? How do we take care of the policing situation, man? And one of the things that happened here in my community, and it's been happening in a lot of communities, man. And one thing that does do a lot, and it goes to what Paulie was saying, man, is to having an actual independent community review board. If you actually have people from the community, you know, going over, you know, these complaints about, you know, certain officers, it's like, all right, cool. Well, is this an actual valid complaint, or is this, you know, something that we should be pursuing? Not only that, I always say is that what's wrong with the testing or the requirements that we have now? Apparently it's very, very minimal. Like Paulie said, I mean, what was the difference in hours between a cop and a barber?
Like 850 for a cop and like 1500 for a barber.
That's disgusting, man. Why is it
double for a barber?
Yeah,
to get that clean fade.
right in the back. You want to make sure you have it either boxed up or rounded out, you know. But
no coincidence why cops have the worst haircuts, I guess.
but my thing is that there's obviously a flaw going on in the test. Something is wrong, or they're not being educated enough. And that's the thing as well, is that my boy Rob and I, who Kenny has met, is that we've had conversations like this before. And it's like, well, one of the things is that obviously you have to be from the community. No, there is no better way of trying to understand the community and to be able to help the community than to be from the community. Not only that, is that, you know, maybe you should start also, you know, adding classes to part of their training as well. Part of the training should be the classes of the history of the neighborhoods that they're going to be working in, about the people that they've actually been working with, you know, seeing the history of it, was the dynamics that they're dealing with. All this old mentality that they've had before isn't working, and it hasn't been working for quite some time. And if anything, I feel like it should be like a doctor. I mean, doctors get checked all the time to make sure they're on their P's and Q's, to make sure that they know their stuff. I mean, you look at some of these, you know, police from other places, from other regions. I haven't seen any around here, but from other regions, and you see these cats that are not in physical top shape. So it's like, well, if they're not in physical top shape, if they're not in top shape physically, are they in top shape mentally? And that's my thing as well, is that you have not only older cats, but you have a lot of these newer kids that are being taught wrong, and they're scared. Their first reaction is to pull out their pistol. Why is it that you're going to pull out your gun on me when you have me on the floor with handcuffs? You have something seriously wrong with you if you think that I'm a threat when I'm being already restrained and I'm on the floor. Something is wrong with that person. And those are the type of people that should not be holding that type of confidence, because that's what we do, is we give those people, men and women, we give that confidence to them to be able to walk around with a gun. We're not out here, flashing our pieces, because there's consequences to stuff like that, man. And that's the one thing that frustrates me, man, is that the training is just seriously outdated, man. Seriously outdated.
And like you said, policing inside your community, there's no reason why we take a cop that was born and raised in beautiful Point Richmond and we put him on patrol in San Pablo, which is a community he does not understand. He does not know people in that community, and he's going in there probably scared to death. And that's why you're seeing these actions from the cops. I'm not making excuses for them, but these guys are scared out of their fucking minds going into some of these neighborhoods. Look at Detroit. Detroit still has beautiful areas of that city, and there's parts of that city that look like a war zone post-apocalypse, right? And you're mixing things up. You have cops coming from one side of the city patrolling the other side of the city, and that makes a huge difference. If you're within the community and you're actually walking the beat outside of your car and you know these people, you might think twice before putting a carotid hold on little Jimmy. When you know Jimmy, it's your neighbor's kid, and he's got problems at home. And that what's happening right now is Jimmy is making a really bad choice in his life. And now you have a choice to make, whether you're going to screw up the rest of his future or maybe try to steer him in the right direction. I'm not saying you're not going to prosecute him. I'm not saying you're not going to incarcerate him, but you're not going to put a chokehold on him. You might not hit him with the taser. And you also now have the opportunity, since you know each other, to have a conversation and have dialogue. I know a lot of people out there that thinks that's the pussy way of going about things, but change doesn't happen without discourse, and there's no reason why it can't start right there. And when we're talking about body cams, you're talking about a community review board. Let's take that a step further. I was saying it this weekend. It was said the revolution will not be televised. Well, it is. The revolution is being live streamed right now. Let's live stream these body cams. Why can't we have a closed circuit TV channel in our neighborhoods that are showing what's going on out there on the streets? We have the show Cops, right? We did that a long time ago. Let me get a raw, uncut feed of what's going on out there so I can see for myself and I can draw my own conclusions. I want to see what's going on out there. Hold these people accountable. And I want charges. These are crimes that are being committed by the op, and they need to be held accountable for it. It's not good enough for me to see a cop get suspended or fired. I want to see them charged. And you like building prisons? Build one for the cops. You're afraid of putting them in there with General Pop? Fine. Build an institution just for the police force. Do that. I'll meet you halfway. But I need to see charges. I need to see that.
And I think that's that brings up the topic that I think is the overall issue with what we're speaking on, man, is that time and time and again, we've seen via video, via somebody's camera phone. Going back to the Rodney King beating, we saw that shit from across the fucking street, right? Somebody on their fucking camcorder recording that shit, right? Mm-hmm. And time and again, you have, with visible evidence of just overwhelmingly overdone force, right? First and foremost. And what we've seen in recent years, just excessive force to the point of taking somebody's life, where officers are not charged with anything, or they're taken to court and then released. And the entire time you have these officers on paid leave. You know how much of a slap in the face that is?
That's vacation. Paid
vacation. How much
vacation.
of a slap in the face that is to fucking people who are enduring these fucking issues, who are going through these issues on a daily basis, weekly basis, the yearly basis, you're paying these motherfuckers, and these motherfuckers that are enduring this issue, they don't have that fucking freedom. They don't have that liberty. Okay? And most of them in recent years don't even have the life to continue to try to make something of themselves after the fact. So it's a gigantic slap in the face when you just turn around and say, we find nothing wrong with this, and we're just going to release you and allow you to go right back to work. And we understand this community is upset with you, so we'll send you somewhere else. That's some fucking bullshit.
I like David Mark's comment. I like his idea. Cops should face double the punishment for crimes they commit. Hold them twice as accountable.
You guys are the fucking people that are supposed to hold the law. If you can't follow the law as it is written, then you are double responsible for breaking that law. Right? Doesn't that make sense? If you guys are the ones that are supposed to be upholding the law, then you should be held double accountable for breaking that law. And we've seen over and over and over again that these people, and I'm not saying everybody, but there has been a large amount of law enforcement that has broken these laws at will. They break these laws at will. Why? Because they know that it doesn't matter what the result is and what their actions are, that they're going to come out of this without any repercussion. And that shit just doesn't work anymore. That shit just doesn't work anymore. And I don't care if you have a relative that's in law enforcement. I have a relative that's in law enforcement, okay? And I'm sitting here telling you that shit ain't right. I don't give a fuck if you have a fucking relative that's in law enforcement. Wrong is wrong. Wrong is wrong. You can't make exceptions just because you know somebody. You can't determine that that's not the case because I know somebody that's involved in that sector of or that has that career. So no, I can't apply those kind of judgments or pass that kind of rule over these people. No, that's bullshit. That's convenience. And that's part of the fucking problem that we're dealing with at this moment. That's the reason why people are uprising and saying, I've had fucking enough of this bullshit, because too many of you motherfuckers are complacent and being able to say, you know what? It's okay because I know him and he's a good guy. Well, that good guy is only good to fucking you. That's the fucking problem.
It's kind of like with like Drew Brees, right? Like he has this like connection to the military because of his grandfather, who we know nothing about, but say he was a good guy and he was in the military and he served honorably and all that. Okay. But you have to be able to take your personal experience. You know, you can't make a blanket statement about the entirety of the whole world on like your one connection to whatever it is that whatever the subject matter may be. And that was something like that. So then you have like somebody who's saying, oh, well, I know this cop, right? Same thing, where it's like, okay, but it's not about the one cop that you know. And also, do you know everything that cop does? Probably not, right? And people need to realize that it's not all about that. Like, and we're not even trying to like demonize. I mean, it's being done. It's out there. It's being shown, right? Like we haven't seen any like less brutality since it was brought into the spotlight. So like those guys in Boston, the 57 guys that resigned from that special unit they were a part of because those two guys got suspended for pushing that 75-year-old guy down. That was like, okay, like you're trying to say not all cops are bad, but then like literally like almost 60 people are all just gonna be in support of quitting this special team so they can show solidarity, and they're all pissed off, dude. You know, it doesn't help the public opinion of what you're doing.
Right.
So I mean,
it's one of those things where it's like, it's a club. You know what I mean? Like it becomes this idea that we're a club, you're a member, so you're with us. So now everybody has to agree that this is okay. And that's not the way our law enforcement should operate. That's okay for other entities that do not hold the fucking kind of control and have the kind of that can have the kind of fucking impact that law enforcement can have on our society and on our communities. That's not okay for that entity. That's okay for a lot of other fucking agencies, a lot of other programs that don't have that kind of impact or control on what people's lives look like. But the law, the people that are involved in law enforcement, police officers, you are supposed to represent us, all of us. You're supposed to protect and serve the community that you live in. Okay? And we understand that there's criminals that need to be taken care of, that need to be arrested, that need to be taken in. We understand that. But you should not have this like freedom to do as you fucking please with whoever it is that you want. I'm sorry, but that shit just doesn't fucking fly with me, because nobody else has that opportunity. Nobody has that ability. When we're seeing there, you saw people filming George Floyd being murdered, and nobody could react. Why? Because the moment somebody takes a step forward, they're shot. They're the next victim. Okay? They're the next victim. Even though they know what's going on is wrong, they know that something is being done that's horrible. They themselves become victims in that moment because they can't even act to help out another fellow human being in that moment, to help save that person's life, because then they become a victim of that same situation. That's fucking bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. Because the one thing that we should be able to do as human beings is help a person in need.
Absolutely. One thing I want to talk about here as we attempt to untangle a lot of these things is you're going to hear a lot of challenging things as we move forward with this, and you already have. And Paulie had brought up Drew Brees, and I'm glad you did. I'm gonna talk about what he said, and I'm gonna talk about what Terry Crews said on Twitter today, because I think these both represent two sides of the spectrum that are very challenging for people, and even folks that are allies in this fight took issue with what Terry Crews said today. Here's my thing, guys. This is what I don't like seeing right now in this movement is there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of anger on both sides. If we're going to lead by example, we have to do just that. Drew Brees is an American citizen and is 100% completely allowed to say what he said. What he said was not hateful. It may have been offensive to people, but it was not a hateful comment. I may not agree with it, but he's allowed to say that. But you go into the comments and you go into the remarks, the responses to what he said, and they are filled with hate and people attacking him for his opinion and the things that he said. You're going to have to allow some of this, guys, because the answer is not going to be on the right. It's not going to be on the left. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. And that's the beautiful thing about this country is we're all entitled to state our opinion. We're here on the podcast doing that just now. You're in the chat doing that right now. You might be calling in with some comments next week, and that's fine. We will accept all of that stuff. The only thing I'm asking for is to keep the hate and the accusations out of there. If somebody says something that's challenging to you or offensive to you, that's a perfect time to start discourse and conversation. A debate is not a conversation. It's two people arguing back and forth. It's mouths open and ears closed. Terry Crews said today, defeating white supremacy without white people creates black supremacy. Equality is the truth. Like it or not, we are all in this together. There's a lot of challenging language in that small comment that he made, in that short comment that he made. I don't want to call it small. It's a big comment. But he's right. It's going to take everybody involved here, from white to black and everything in between, to make this happen and work together. All voices are going to have to be heard in this. It's everybody out there shouting out all lives matter. We know that. And you know, we don't need to explain what Black Lives Matter is. Or maybe we do. right? Maybe we do. Right?
I think we do. I think we do.
The metaphor I've been using is every house on my street matters. Every house on this block is important. My house is incredibly important to me for obvious reasons. It provides shelter, so on and so forth. But if my neighbor's house is on fire, I need the fire truck pouring water on their house. My house doesn't need it. My house matters very much to me. But at this point, I'm not the one that's on fire. They are. Let's save their house, because if you come and pour water in my house and it's not on fire, I'm just going to be pissed off. Like, you didn't help me out at all. You set me back, and now, now my neighbor, they've lost everything. And that's what Black Lives Matter means. Nobody means all lives don't matter. That's a given, obviously. All lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter and Brown Lives Matter and everything in between. So what Terry Crews is saying is very poignant, and it's a very brave statement for him to make. And I'm looking at the mentions, and he's getting attacked and slammed on Twitter because people did not take the time to really stop and think what he's talking about. That's a challenging statement. Be ready for those. Get away from the hashtags and the cliche chants and stuff like that. We know all those things. No justice, no peace. That's been around for decades. We get that. That's an important voice. But these are the challenging statements that are going to have to be made, and the ensuing conversations, not just attacking people for what they said. You're attacking them because it offended you, and maybe it offends you because you didn't understand it completely. Take the time to hear what people have to say. And like I said, you have choices. You can choose to ignore it, or you can choose to educate. But you have to come to the table at some point if this is going to move forward. You have to.
Well, weren't people mad because he said black supremacy, but he was essentially saying that we don't want a black supremacy.
Exactly.
Everybody has to work together, but all anybody's focusing on is those two words, and their brains are just going off like, and that's not even what he was saying.
And it highlights the fear. It highlights the fear of white supremacists or people that we don't have to go that far up the chain or down the spectrum. It's people that don't understand that this is a problem. We don't want black supremacy. We don't want white supremacy. We want equality and equity, right? That's what we want. We don't want this to be tipped. And that's what white supremacists are afraid of, is that if they're going to give in and help eradicate racism, that they will be marginalized. That's not what we want either. That's not what we want either.
I would say this, man, and you guys are absolutely right in what you just stated. First of all, we know that anger comes from a place of misunderstanding or not comprehending what it is that you're seeing or you're hearing. And so that's where all that anger derives from. People saw a statement from Terry Crews that didn't say Black Lives Matter, that didn't say, we need to end white supremacy. He came from a place of thought in terms of where do we go as a whole, right? Because this world isn't going to stop having white people. This world isn't going to stop having black people. It's not going to stop having brown people. It's not going to stop having every race, culture that we have. It's not. That shit's not going to cease to exist. It's all going to continue to live on. And in order for us to get anywhere, we all have to be on the same page. We all have to be on the same page. That's a fact. We can't make any movement in Black Lives Matter. We can't make any movement in trying to get people to understand that brown lives matter or that immigrant lives matter. Okay? We can't have any kind of fucking movement if we can't bring white people along with us. We can't take this stance of it's us against them. Okay, and we're sitting here in front of you like I've never had that perspective. I've had a lot of anger towards certain white people, but I've never had a perspective that said I can't like or trust white people. Because as you can see, I have plenty of very close friends, people that I consider brothers, that are white people. Okay. So it's very particular to certain people. Okay. And that's just because of what's in their hearts, what's in their minds, and what they believe. That's the only issues that I have. Okay. And that goes from a very young age until this current stage of my life. I have a family that I had. It's a chosen family when I lived in San Diego that was made up of one black dude, and he was the minority in our group, one white dude that was the minority in our group. Okay. And then 50-50 Hispanic and black people. Okay. All just a brotherhood, just a family, just loving and caring for one another. We saw we had external differences, but we also saw that we were very fucking much alike. And in order for us to get anywhere, and this is a conversation that we always had. This is one thing that I loved about my family when I was out in San Diego. We always got together every single week. We sat together. We conversed. We enjoyed each other. We joked. We also talked about very, very specific things. And we also said to ourselves, if motherfuckers only understood that we were all the same, if motherfuckers only understood what we understand right now, sitting together and recognizing each other as brothers, as family, even though we're not blood, we're very, very much family. If only motherfuckers could understand that worldwide, we wouldn't have any of the fucking issues that we have right now. If we could all be on the same page and say, we all come from different walks of life, we all have different experiences, we all have different advantages and disadvantages, but we recognize each other, we see each other, we fucking care about each other. That's all it takes to fucking get anywhere together as a unit. And that's the one thing that's missing. That's the one thing that's missing. And there's a lot of disruption in there. And there's a lot of people fighting to keep that separation and that segmentation. So when a guy like Terry Crews comes out and says what he said, he's just voicing that very same thing that I just said. If you can be together, then you can make real change. Without the cooperation or the inclusion of white people, you will never see the change that you want. If you want to just make white people the enemy, you're not going to get what you want. You're never going to get there because now you're causing division. You have to reach deep inside your heart, and you have to have acceptance for everybody. And you have to have a willingness to have discussion and conversation, like you said, Kenny. Conversation is what's needed, not dispute, not angry fucking, you're wrong, I'm right, that kind of shit. It's like, okay, I don't agree with you, but let me understand you. Where are you coming from? Why do you feel the way that you feel? Help me to understand you better so that maybe I can help you to understand me. That's where that shit changes. So you can't condemn a motherfucker for that.
You can't make white people the enemy, and I'm half white. And I think that the main responsibility for people who are white that want to be an ally of this movement is that you need to have difficult conversations with people. I mean, if you care enough about them, you know what I mean? If it's somebody that you really care about, some people are saying, oh, it's definitely not black people's responsibility to be educating white people about this. Okay. But other white people, or like me, where I'm half white, I had this talk with my dad like a year and a half or two ago. And it took 45 minutes to explain to my white dad what white privilege was. Now, my dad, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, he was racist. He's from Texas. My, uncle, my dad's eldest brother, he's, he votes for Trump, you know what I mean? And he's racist, he's not out there burning crosses and, lynching or anything. But that's the thing, is there's this spectrum of it. And some people are out there like these fucking dudes that shot Ahmaud Arbery, but there a lot of it is systemic, and that's coming out more and more. But my dad's a good guy. He never taught me to be racist, but you pick up on little things, and I think anything that I had to deal with within myself was more like cultural. But it took 45 minutes for it to get across to my dad, because of course he was taking it like maybe I was saying like he was, racist or whatever. I'm like, Dad, no, you never taught me to be that way. You're not like that. But this, and I explained to him, like, say when you were going for this job, there was another guy who was black. He has the same experience as you. Maybe he's even better than you a little bit. His resume looks a little bit better, but they went with you. Or like me, my last name is his last name. So on paper, when that's coming through, I look like a certain person in someone's mind when my name comes through something. Whereas, instead of if my last name was Gutierrez, which is my mom's maiden name, right? So those are the little things that I finally got through to him. And I'm happy that I have the parents that I have, because there are a lot of people out there that are in my age group. And then I think there's like these really young, like Gen Z kids that are really having a difficult time coming to grips with their parents, right? But I mean, I can't imagine how difficult that is for people when they feel in their heart that this shit is wrong, that racism is wrong, and they're looking within themselves and they're trying to be part of the change. And you have somebody who is your parent, who is probably in a lot of ways a good person, who's cared for you and guided you in a lot of other ways that were valuable. But how do you reconcile that? And like I said, I'm fortunate that I don't have to deal with that, but there's a lot of people out there that are, and that's the education that they need. And whether it's watching the 13th, that explains a lot, since like the slave trade all the way up till 2016. But I mean, I've been talking to people about the evolutionary aspect of this. A lot of people don't know. So a lot of people would say they believe in science, but they don't know that, the fossils show that the first man was in Africa. And if you're at the equator, you're going to be darker. There's a lot of these things that could be explained. And if somebody could really look at it like, okay, well, the reason they have light skin is because early man went up towards Europe and the sun rays don't hit at the same angle. So they needed less melanin to let the vitamin D in. Like, that's what it comes down to, like every white person's first great times 1,000 granddaddy was from Africa, and a lot of people who don't believe in evolution would definitely deny that and would be like, that's bullshit. But there's a lot of people out there who believe in science, that if you broke it down to them, they would have a different perspective. And those are the conversations that can be had with white people by white people, that like they're very important. I think that the white people that don't believe in racism, there's a big responsibility on them right now. There's a big responsibility on white people that want to be a positive part of this movement. And it's, nobody wants to have these conversations. Okay, it takes courage to talk to somebody that you care about, but like I said, we're at a time where there's no more gray area. There just can't be a gray area anymore. There just can't. So
I remember when I first heard the song "Why Is That" by KRS-One, where he breaks down he breaks it down step by step why Moses was likely black, and it completely blew my mind and made me revisit history and start looking through things through a different prism. And that was through a rap song. Let me speak to my white brothers and sisters right now. You see me, very white, confirmed. I grew up where I grew up. I think geographically, where I'm at, the cultures I participated in, mostly, being hip hop music, and the work that I've done has positioned me to be an ally with a lot of people of color. It just happens to be a lot of my friends and coworkers are that, again, because of where I work and where I grew up and the cultures I participated in. It just, a lot of it is contextual, right? It just where it ended up being. And I'm just fine, guys. I still have my white privilege fully intact. And I think a lot of this a lot of this resistance is the fear that you're going to lose your white privilege. What if I told you that that's never going to happen? What this is about is sharing your white privilege with everybody else to where it's no longer white privilege, but just privilege. It's the pursuit of happiness, which is baked into our Constitution. It's not you giving up your privilege as a white person. It's you saying that everyone else should also be allowed to participate in this privileged life that comes along with being an American citizen and worldwide as we move beyond that. What if I told you that? Does that dissolve some of the fear and reluctance that you might have to participate in this movement? Because you are afraid of losing that. You're afraid of being the top dog. What if I told you that wasn't going to go away? The only thing that changes is that we all get to operate on an even playing field. That's what this is about. It's not about marginalizing and punishing white people. Don't let your white guilt arrest you and keep you from participating in this movement. Allow that to propel you. And in the meantime, weaponize your white privilege to shield those around you that don't get to participate. Like I was explaining to Che, why is it that I drove home every single Raider game 2 years in a row? Because you got a van full of Raidered out dudes, and I got Che or Bobby driving the van. We're getting pulled over. I guarantee you that's going to happen. No offense. We're getting pulled over. We didn't get pulled over once in 2 years. I got pulled over. My last car, tinted windows, legal tint windows. I got pulled over 7 times in 10 years. I got 1 fix-it ticket. 3 of those times probably should have been a DUI, and I got let go every single time. They were looking for a car that matched my description, or FYI, you didn't use your blinker and that tint's illegal. You might want to get it fixed because next time you might get a ticket. Hey, if this isn't what's going on right here, I'm getting ticketed every single time, if not worse. I'm getting pulled out of that car. I'm getting the whole treatment. I'm getting the whole thing, dog. So weaponize your white privilege, shield friends of color, get into positions of power, and use it to make a difference. You know, you could change policy from within too. You can go incognito. You can move in places that other people aren't allowed to move. So again, don't be afraid of losing what you have. You're never going to lose what you have. Be intent on sharing that with everybody that's here, because you've heard it before. It's cliche. We're all the same color on the inside. You know, it's a total cliche, but it's absolutely true. There's nothing that should change for you in your life. Your life should be as good as it is. You're living the American dream. All we're asking is everyone else should have that same opportunity. You shouldn't have to give anything up, but they should be able to gain what you have as well. And there's plenty of opportunity to go around. It's just, it shouldn't be a commodity. It should be a human right.
Communication is key, man. It's just one of the biggest things is communication, education, and just being conscious, man, being aware. If you're able to talk to somebody without having your own hangups, you know, just leave those hangups at the door and just go ahead and sit down and conversate with that other person, man, because you might be surprised on how much y'all have in common. And it could be a lot of the times. I mean, what was it? Chad was talking to me about this documentary where you sit down and you're like, well, my thoughts and my ideas are sounding kind of ridiculous right now. The reasonings that I have for whatever it is that my life choices, obviously when I say them out loud, isn't correct, isn't right. And that's not an actual way to live. That's how, if I'm trying to portray myself as somebody who's, you know, better than other people, man. And so it's important to be able to have that conversation, and more importantly, just to be able to listen, man. Because a lot of the times everyone is always trying to talk over the next person because they want to be heard. And what happens is that the conversations get louder and louder, and before you know it, everyone's just yelling and no one's paying attention, man, because all of a sudden these defensive walls have been put up because you want to make sure that you get heard. And not only that too, but education doesn't mean go out there and get yourself a PhD, a double PhD. Education means I might know something that you might not know. You know, I might be able to explain something to you in the way that you never thought of it. You know, it's as Malcolm said, you know, each one teach one. You know, I got something to bring to the table that y'all didn't know, and you guys are going to bring something to me, something to the table right here for all of us to actually be able to know. And as far as, being conscious is just, being aware. It's nice, it's sexy being out there in the marches and parading and this and that, but how many of us haven't seen those videos, those pictures of those people just out there really quick holding a drill so that it looks like they're actually, helping out real quick for the snap, pose, and then just give the drill back and then just get in the car and drive away. I mean, it's very easy.
Give the drill back to the Mexican guy.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's very easy to be out there, to be in front of the march, to be the loudest one. But how many of us are out there putting this shit together, actually going out there talking to the people, trying to get people out there, trying to get your message heard, trying to, come up with these press releases, man, trying to get these permits, man. Just because you're not out there, just because you don't want to be out there, doesn't mean that you can't help. There's people out there that want to help, that want to contribute, but they can. And especially in places like in my community where there's a lot of people that are undocumented, it's a risk for them to try to be able to show solidarity, because all of a sudden now they feel like they're exposing themselves, and they don't have to be that way, man. You can still be out there and be helping out. But that's the key thing, man, is to be able to keep that going, man, to keep people aware, to make sure that people are on it, man, to have that consistency. Because if not, then all you're gonna have is just a bunch of marches where nothing changes, as Kenny was being told. The thing is that we have to be there, man. We have to be there to do that dirty work, that groundwork, man. And that's the one thing that, like I said, man, everyone can run to the front of the fucking march and be there and try to show themselves, but how many of us are out there in the back trying to make sure that no one gets left behind?
Right.
It's not only that, dog. I'm gonna say this. It's what's the follow-up?
Yep.
Like, what is your follow-up to your existence in the march? Like, if you go out and you participate in a protest or a march, what is now your follow-up? Because if you're going to go out there and you're going to say that you're for something, now it's your responsibility to be able to enforce that or to reinforce that. Just going out and being part of something or taking part in a protest or a march is not the work. The work comes from what comes before and after that. Those are beautiful moments, and those are beautiful things that happen when a whole community comes together. But there's a lot of work left to do once that ends. So once that comes to an end and you return home, now what are you going to provide to the cause? If it is you just going right back to fucking work, or you just sitting on your fucking couch, then you ain't part of the solution. You're part of the problem. You can go and join a fucking protest, and you can go join a march and showcase that you're part of the group. But when you're not returning home to educate, inform, and make people realize what it is that you were out there for, then you didn't do anything. You were just there. You were just taking part. Okay?
Taking space.
That's it. You're just taking space, and that's great. That's great in itself, but it doesn't get anything done. It doesn't get anything done. It draws attention. But what comes after that is what get things done. You brought attention, now put in the fucking work to actually get things done. And that comes with conversations. That comes with making people understand where you're coming from. That comes with educating younger people into either understanding why people have these feelings, or understanding how they can voice their feelings in those same situations. That's where the actual power exists, is actually getting these people to be on the same fucking page. If you can't get people on the same page, then you have a lost cause. You have a lost cause.
So next steps, right? Where do we go from here? We have this great movement that's happening right now. So one of the speakers yesterday made a good point that this isn't a trend. We can't allow it to become a trend. We can't let it fade as a trend. This is more than a hashtag. It needs to go beyond that. And you're seeing that a lot of people going out there just to be a part of the movement. I've been calling it Coronachella. jokingly, because a lot of these crowds, they look like the Coachella crowd. They're out there. There's something they could do. It's our first opportunity and first good reason to leave our house and lay everything on the line. And that's all great. That's fantastic. People are risking a lot right now to be out there. But what are the next steps? First off, this right here is maybe one of your greatest weapons in the movement. Keep your phone charged and keep space on it. For one, it's going to help you in your defense. I mean, if injustices are being done, you can record those right there. The other thing is, while you're out there at the marches, I encourage everybody to live stream, take pictures, and document. Show people that this is a peaceful movement. Don't believe the hype. The violence and the rioting, that stuff died down quite some time ago, right? Last weekend. We're a full week behind that now. And as we move forward, I expect this to be more organized and more peaceful. So document that. Show them what the real deal is. The third thing, have conversations with people. But beyond that, beyond talking to people, listen to folks. Che and I both learned this on our intervention trainings. You have to meet people where they're at. You can't stand where you are and try to entice people to come over to your side. It's not always going to work like that. You're going to have to listen and meet people where they're at and slowly take them with you and guide them and go at their speed. Understand that they have a lot of hangups, they have a lot of fear, and there's things they don't understand. Another thing you can do, white people, educate yourself on culture. Start with your own culture. Don't accept the term white for yourself, because Italians and Irish are both considered white. Those cultures are extremely different from each other. You have to understand your own identity and embrace your own culture first. That's going to help you move forward to understanding different cultures. If you can understand the differences between white cultures, that's a good starting point for you. Start there. Start somewhere where you're comfortable and begin moving forward from there. Because the term white does not just apply to white people. Look at Candace Owens. She could be lumped into that group pretty damn easily. You know, I said it. It. White is a philosophy. It's not a skin color, right? It's not. So understand and educate yourself on your culture and start expanding from there. And you will understand that there's a lot of crossover, and a lot of times the differences can be very interesting and very beautiful. A lot of white families have multiple cultures within them. You know, I have one side of my family, Scott Irish. The other side of my family is German. When I go to holidays at one side of the family's house versus the other side of the family's house, very different, right? Then my girlfriend, she's Latina, so I'm learning more and more about that culture as well. But you just have to educate yourself on those differences and understand differences aren't a bad thing. Sometimes it's cool, right? Sometimes it's really cool. What are some other steps that we can take, guys? Paulie, chime in, man. Let's get back to you. What's another step people could take beyond going out to these marches?
Well, as you mentioned and I had mentioned, you have those conversations, you listen, and then, there's lots of organizations that you can donate to. I understand in this time, especially, maybe you're not able to monetarily donate, but there's also a lot of petitions to sign. Those things, I always kind of wonder what happens when, with certain petitions, but I think there are ones like change.org, for instance. I think that generally petitions that are on that website tend to be ones that get a lot of people to sign it. And then I think that has to help somewhat. Again, I don't know everything that happens after someone signs a petition. You're hoping that someone's seeing that and then it's going to compel them to start making some change. So again, if you can't donate, sign some petitions. Also, I think that art is important in a time like this. The art that comes out in times of struggle sometimes is the most powerful. And I know, speaking for myself, that art has just been, very helpful in helping to get the poison out. I mean, you don't have to even show anybody what you did, just get it out. But if you can put together some art that is expressing how you're feeling in the moment, and it is something that is symbolically going to inspire something. I mean, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything greater than that you could do with art, other than to, or I'm saying like that, you put something together, and if it inspires people, that's pretty much the apex of creating any form of art, Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's what's coming to me right now. We've covered a lot of it. One thing I did want to mention about, people with race is that, they've showed in some studies that, if you get one person of one race and you get, somebody, even if it's not a race, say it's like a Muslim person, right? And a Christian person, and you get them alone and allow them to just converse, a lot of times they're going to realize that they're a lot more similar than they thought. Oh, she takes her son to soccer practice, I take my son to baseball practice, but really our schedules are similar. It kind of seems actually like her husband is somewhat like mine. And and that would be a very slow process. I mean, how are you going to get one person and then another person and have that kind of an interaction? But if you could just somehow try to get some people together, or even small groups, and just get them speaking. But I guess you would need those people to actually want to change. And I know that there's people out there that do want to change. They feel compelled to shed this layer of skin. And those people, if they come together and they can actually talk to these other people that they consider themselves to be so different from, realize that they're not really that different. And when you start to see somebody as a human being, that's when these people, if you're not considering somebody to be a human being, that's where you might actually be able to see that this person is in fact every bit is complex and beautiful, and all these things that you are, so is that person. And it's not something that you can look at from this obtuse angle anymore. I don't know how you could get that together. It would be nice if, with the way that people react to media, like if there was like some sort of show, right? They have all these reality shows about stupid shit. Why not have a reality show where you're getting people on there? And even if those are just this one guy and this one guy, hopefully when people are watching that, it's resonating with them on an emotional level. If they have that desire inside of them to challenge their feelings about something, and they're seeing like, oh man, that guy reminds me of me. Like, man, I know his story from this episode. Wow, if he can love that guy, well, man, like there's hope for me. I mean, I don't know. I just think that people need to start seeing positive interactions between people, the other, the us versus them. We need to stop with that. Us versus them mentality is probably at the root of almost everything we've talked about tonight.
Killer Mike's Trigger Warning would be a good TV show to start with, because he kind of dabbles in some of that stuff, right? That's right there.
Hey, shout out! By the way, shout out to Killer Mike, man. He had probably one of the most fucking heartfelt, open, and real fucking speeches on this whole matter. I don't know if you guys got an opportunity to see that. Joe Rogan actually posted it. It was beautiful. He was asked to speak in regards to Atlanta, and basically came out, and he was like, I don't know why they asked me to be here. Very humble and very, very like trying to let people know, like, I don't take myself as being somebody of importance, but a lot of things that he said, I think a lot of people need to hear. So if you guys haven't seen that, I just recommend. I'm not going to try to repeat what he said, because I would do a disservice. You got to see it for yourself. You got to listen to what he has to say. And hopefully, if you didn't know, if you don't have an understanding for the things that he's speaking of, you gain some understanding on what he's talking about. Yeah.
And again,
shout out Killer Mike.
Find common ground. These conversations don't have to start at racism where it's real heavy, right? Those of you that are listening, a lot of you guys are Raider fans out there, right? Raider Nations is huge fraternity that's out there with a lot of different people in it. We already know, we've talked about MAGA Raider fan and how there's like their divide. But if I sat in a room with MAGA Raider fan and we just talk like Raiders history for an hour, we'd be having a great time. And me and him could leave that room and hopefully we can both be like, you know what, that dude was all right. And then that starts that cognitive dissonance there, right? So I'm meeting somebody where they're at and then slowly you can start kind of getting into those conversations down the line. But it's about building community and building trust and building those foundations before you move on to some of those deeper conversations, because people get triggered. I get triggered all the time. I have prejudices in my life that I'm aware of, that I'm still working on, right? Get out of your comfort zone. Talk to people that you maybe normally wouldn't talk to. We had Zay Jones, wide receiver from the Raiders, share an experience that he had recently when he was in a store. Older white lady came up to him and she said, "You know what? I stand with you." And she was like in tears.
She said, she said her words were, "You matter to me.
You matter to me."
Which is fucking amazing.
2 weeks ago, that lady might not have said anything. And that's okay, except Zay never would have known. And who knows? Who knows what he thinks when he's looking at her? Who knows what she thinks when she's looking at him? But just opening your mouth, saying something nice dissolves so much tension in this world. Talk to somebody while you're in line at the grocery store. Get out there and vote. We out here on the West Coast, excuse me, and even on the East Coast, we think a certain type of way. We're very progressive here near the water, but there's a lot of land between here and the East Coast. And there's a lot of people that think very differently than the way we think. We can't think that these things are common knowledge or obvious, because they're not obvious to a lot of people. So we have to get out there and do our part here on our coast. We have to vote, but you could also vote for your wallet. Instead of going to 7-Eleven, maybe you go to the Korean-owned convenience store that's right next door that sells the exact same shit, and you're supporting a local business. And not only that, supporting people of color, people that have been marginalized. You know, if I want to go get a taco, I'm not going to Chipotle. I've eaten at Chipotle twice in my life. It was trash both times, right? I've eaten there twice. It was trash all 5 times. And that's how bad it was.
The only good thing about that place is the water.
Go to your local taco shop. Go to Galletas. Go to Tacos Ameca. Support the local business, especially right now when things are just now starting to open up. I mean, those people need your dollars. You know what I'm saying? Corporations are a big part of what we're talking about. Squash them, you know. Go support your local hardware store. Do it as much as you can. I understand that our options are more and more limited, but there's plenty of options when it comes to food. The majority of the restaurants in your town are probably independently owned. Yeah, you have an Applebee's, you have a Chili's and all that, but there's tons of little mom and pop places. Go support them. I mean, this battle happens at all these different levels, from political to retail. And in this world that we live in, it's all about that almighty dollar. So retail is a really big part of this fight, guys. It's huge, you know?
It's about taking care of each other, man. I mean, if you keep that money in the community, you know, you keep those resources, you keep your economy going, man. You're only making yourself that much stronger. It's just about education, man. Honestly, it really is. Each one teach one. Hey, don't go shopping over there because these people over here, you know, supporting this, that, or the other. One of the biggest things that a lot of people didn't know, and especially in this community, is that a lot of people, a lot of farm workers have their money saved in Wells Fargo. A lot of money that Wells Fargo, a lot of that money that they have from those farm workers, they use that money and they invested in other corporations. One of those giant corporations that they invest was in a corporation called the Geo Group, which was basically building all these fucking prisons for undocumented workers. All these same cats coming over here to work are basically paying for their own fucking jails and shit, man. And when you start telling people about this, you start opening their eyes. They start realizing that their pocketbook, that's a really big thing right there, man. I'm glad you brought that up, Kenny, because your pocketbook has a lot to say, man. Your voice, it may not be as loud, but you still have that fucking voice to be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and support this local mom and pop shop right here. They may be a couple cents, a couple dollars extra, but I know that it's coming back right here. Just like your local credit unions and stuff, you know, like I said, compared to your big banks, those credit unions are basically trying to give out these small loans, these micro loans to your community so that they could reinvest the money right back in again, man. It's about educating your people. It's about telling everybody. It's about telling your folks, your family members about, look, you should think about this. You should really think about that. And it's not about being preachy about it. It's just about having that conversation. If you're able to have that conversation, like Kenny said, you're able to plant that seed in there so that it could slowly start growing, so that you're able to think outside of that. Because if you come off very preachy, people are going to be very defensive. So it's better to come off in a conversation and be like, hey, did you know this? Trip out on this. Look, you can do this and that. And it's worked a lot of times, man. When you come at people and you let them know what it is that's going on, they'll make the right choice. Why are you going to go ahead and ingest high fructose corn syrup into your body when these are the damages that it can do to you? You slowly start changing people's mentality, bro. I mean, the best thing I could say is that my moms, I use my moms as the example, bro. When we grew up, when I was a kid, my mom would cook everything with lard, bro. And now lard is a big no-no. Why? Because they know better. Lard is okay in little bits, but as it was before, where you were just straight drowning your fucking eggs in like half a tub of fucking of manteca and shit, you know. Now everybody knows a little bit better, man. So it's like I said, that was one of the best examples that I would use with my parents, and they'd be like, you know what, that's true. We, you know, it wasn't about being all preachy. It was just about like, hey, look, this isn't good for you.
Yeah.
And seeds take time to grow, right? One of my favorite things that I like to hear, have these difficult conversations with the youth, and they seem to take no effect, right? I'm talking to, I'm talking to like Robert, and he's not trying to hear me. You know, my words seem to be going in one ear and out the other. But my favorite words that I hear from these youth is a year later, I catch up with them and they say my favorite phrase, I thought about what you said. And they've made changes in the time that I haven't seen them. You got to have some patience, right? Don't get frustrated and pent up because somebody's not agreeing with you. Just plant the seed and walk away. Don't bring the negativity and the hate. You're just going to push them further away. Say what you have to say. Listen to them. Let the seed grow. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you got to go back in there and plant another one. But I thought about what you said. Some of the most powerful words that I hear in my line of work, because those things, they sit there and they germinate. And over time, you might see a little leaf, you know, peeking through the concrete, and you just never know, right? You just never know. Other things you can do. You guys have heard some of my thoughts on collectivism, which is, you know, activism on the internet, which I feel like it doesn't go very far. It doesn't. It goes to a certain point and then it stops. But there's ways to think outside the box. I want to give a shout out to K-pop fans. All right. Might be like, where the fuck is he going with this?
Hell yeah, that dude threw me the fuck off. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So they've been doing this for a while now, and you're starting to see it a lot more. Like, I'm on Twitter a lot, and Bobby's seen this. You go to the trending tab on Twitter, and I've seen hashtag white supremacist, and I'm like, oh shit. And I click on it, and it's been completely hijacked and pillaged by K-pop fans that are using the hashtag, but putting in GIFs of their favorite K-pop fan clips. And it completely hijacked the discourse. They're out there trying to conversate with each other using this hashtag, and K-pop came in and said, no, get that the fuck out of here. It's negative. We don't want it. And it completely derails that line of thinking, right?
Everything they've been trying to get going for like the past like week or two, they just
shut down. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep. You know,
shout out K-pop fans. Hey,
hell
I
yeah.
applaud you, man.
There's things you could do, right? Think outside the box. You know, maybe you get to know some K-pop or something, or maybe it's something else. Maybe we start putting some football clips in there. I don't know, you know, but there's ways to do these things and to think outside the box. There's also a lot of research you can do. There's tons of resources and tons of opportunities to volunteer in your community. You might be thinking like, well, how does that help anybody? I'm volunteering, but how does that change the narrative? Well, let's say you're a white person, you know. I'm working right now on East Side San Jose every Friday doing food distribution. I have a volunteer team out there that is so multicultural, it would spin your head. What does that do? The residents that are coming up and getting food from us, they're seeing those faces in their community, helping them out. And they're realizing, you know what? Maybe not all white people are that bad. Maybe not all Koreans are that bad. Maybe the Vietnamese, they're cool too. They use cilantro like we do. So that's a starting point, right?
Yeah. Hey, there you go, dude. That's awesome.
Cilantro unites everybody, bro.
It does. It's just about taking these opportunities to build trust. Put your face out there. Show people that not everybody is all that bad, and it goes both ways, right? It goes both ways. So, it's just, again, creating moments where dialogue can happen, and that conversation doesn't have to be about racism. It could be about, how's your day doing? How are you guys been doing? You've been cooped up in your house for two months. What have you guys been up to? And you start just having a normal conversation, white person, Mexican person from very different neighborhoods. And you walk away going, oh, that wasn't so bad. I could do that again, and you're off and running.
I would just say this, man, because everything you guys have said is fucking been spot on. But I think in order for there to be some movement in the direction of change, it's just openness, man. It's just availability and willingness to hear somebody out. Mm-hmm. Be willing to carry on a conversation, and be willing to encounter a thought or an idea that might conflict with what you have in mind. And don't look at that as an offense necessarily, but look at it as a chance to have a conversation, right? That takes a lot. That takes a lot of a person, especially when you have very strong feelings and you're very strong-willed in what you believe in. It's not always the easiest thing to have a conversation or listen to somebody that you disagree with. Mm-hmm. But that's what it takes. That is really what it takes in order for there to be any kind of movement in a positive direction. Other than that, you're just going to have conflict. If you're just too busy trying to prove somebody wrong, you're never going to get it.
Yeah.
They believe to be true. So you can't have that without communication. You can't have that ability to grow and move forward without actually listening to somebody and having a respectful conversation with them. So that's all I would say. That's what I would leave you guys with. Just be open, man.
Last thing. I've talked a lot on here, and I'm not a person of color, so I kind of feel weird about that. But I want to say one more thing.
You're brown inside, bro. You're brown inside.
Yeah, we clarified that weeks ago.
When Trump was elected, true. When Trump was elected, I had conversations with all of you guys, right? And I don't remember which one of you said this, but he said, not all is lost. Maybe this is the disaster we need to build things back up again. Maybe things fall apart so terribly that we have no choice but to pick up the pieces and put them back together the right way this time. And we're here now. This is where we're at.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry if I think that might have been me.
I think it was you. When a forest catches fire, trees shoot seeds out all over the place. Out of that destruction will come new life at some point. It's going to take time. That's where we're at right now. Our forest is on fire. We are living in a time of absolute chaos and confusion right now. It is wild out there. I don't care what side of this you're on. There's history happening right in front of you right now, and it's an amazing thing. Yeah, you cannot deny the sheer power of what's happening right now. It's crazy. It scares a lot of people. There's angry people on both sides of this. We need to come together on that. But I want to congratulate Donald Trump for burning this whole thing down to the ground. And hopefully you'll be gone soon. And don't look at Joe Biden as the answer to the problems. He's not. A lot of you people want to argue against him, and you should. But let's vote this guy out. Joe Biden is just more of the same. Joe Biden has a great chance to win because he holds the same sensibilities that they all do up there. He's part of the elite. These people, the truth is, these people don't give a shit about you. It doesn't matter if it's on the right or the left. They're all looking to line their pockets, not yours, right? But let's at least get an administration in there that's not an embarrassing pile of shit. But that's, again, what we've spent the last 45 minutes now talking about. Let's look within ourselves and not rely on these bullshit leaders to make changes for ourselves. We're seeing now that we as an American population have a lot of power to go out there and force change if we want to. Occupy your local office, local politics, support your local businesses, vote with your wallet as much as you got to get out there and vote personally. Have conversations with your kids, get to know your schools, get to know the teachers, get to know the people in your community. Community starts inside your house. It moves on to your neighbors. It's the grocery store you shop at. There's all these little micro communities within the town that you live in, and start getting to know these people. Don't be so shy anymore. Let's break down these barriers. Let's dissolve the tension, and let's start building trust and community. That's where it's going to start. That's where it's going to start. Bake a pie, take it next door. We used to live in a time when I was just a kid. I knew every single neighbor on my block. Now most of my neighbors don't even fucking talk to each other.
Yeah, that's very true, dude.
Shout out to the lady lives right across the street from me. African-American lady, moved in here about 4 years ago. Every holiday, she goes around door to door dropping off baked goods to people. When the COVID thing hit, she's a nurse. She's going door to door asking everybody if we're okay. She's a black lady living in a primarily white neighborhood. Do you know what kind of bravery it takes just to do something that simple? Just to knock on your neighbor's door as a black woman, a single black woman at that. She's doing what she can to break down these barriers. That's what we need to do. The forest is on fire. Let's rebuild it.
Yeah, fucking A, dude. I
Yep.
believe it's
Yep.
I believe it's the Hindu god Kali. That's the god of disaster, man. And it was a coworker of mine who basically broke it down to me, because I was like, why would you want to pray to disaster? And he was like, well, he's like, for destruction. He says, well, through destruction, only through destruction can you rebuild. And it's true, man. It's not something pretty that we want to see, because as Kenny said, it takes us out of our comfort zones, man.
Fuck Mola Ram, dude. Fuck Mola Ram in the Temple of Doom, bro.
we're forced to see things, not just in our society, but in ourselves as well. And we're able to actually see, it's like, well, our beliefs that we hold near and dear to our hearts, are those actually like beliefs that can better my community, can better each other? And in the end, if it's something negative, your better senses will come through. And it's kind of hard to look at somebody with a trustful eye when they come over to your house, as Kenny said, every holiday, and they hook you up with like some free cookies or whatever. It's not free cookies. It's just basically them trying to tear down that wall of distrust and be like, hey, what's up? Let's conversate. And it's a really big thing, man, because like I said, I keep going back to it. Communication is key, because without communication, there is a big probability for imaginary hurts. And that's the worst thing that could ever happen to anybody, because now all of a sudden that person hates me. So all of a sudden I don't like them. Because I know they don't like me, like just this or whatever that. And you just start coming up with these wild conspiracies all up in your mind, and all because you are too scared to go walk up to that person and talk to them, and to be able to actually find out like, hey, what's up? How's it going? This and that, and it's a big thing, man. Nobody wants to be put into that spot to have those conversations, man. But it's important to be able to go out there, man, and put yourself out there, man. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't lose nothing from it, man. You have more to gain than you do to lose.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
Closing remarks, Polly, Che?
There was just one more thing that I thought of. This was something that I had started implementing at my place of work a few years ago. The place that I worked at, I noticed that most of my coworkers, they were white, and when certain people would come in, that they got treated differently. So you talked about equity earlier, right? So equality is when everybody gets the same amount of whatever, right? But equity is knowing that this person needs a little bit more. So, for instance, particularly with African Americans, when they would come in, my thing would be like, if I saw them, I would go up to them immediately. Now, I'm not saying that you pander to people. I mean, you got to be genuine about it. But my policy was like, if I saw them, I knew basically if they were standing there for 2 seconds and I got to them right away, great. But they might have been standing there for 3-5 minutes, and so that's something that I think that, and it doesn't have to just be African Americans. It could also be like Asians that, there is a big Asian community all throughout the Bay Area, and they it's about minorities, right? And so if you can start adopting these thought processes where you're trying to essentially make up for what these people aren't getting, like you said, this white privilege just being privilege. So that's something else, like I thought of that I just implemented without really putting a lot of thought into it, but it becomes a habit. And again, if you're going up to that person, they weren't waiting, then so be it. There we go. That's the graphic that puts it down.
That's it.
Yeah. So you guys listening, Paulie makes a great point. A lot of people don't understand the difference between equality and equity. So if you're not watching this, you're not seeing the graphic, I'll explain it to you. If you got a 5-foot fence and you got two people, one of them is 4 feet tall and the other person is 2 feet tall, and you give them each a 2-foot step ladder, the 4-foot person is going to see right over that fence, but the person that's 3 feet tall, they still got a little ways to go to see over that fence. So they need a taller ladder. And that's what's equity is giving them the tools that they need to reach the same level of success as the person standing next to them. And it might take more than what that person has.
Let me just say this to that too, Kenny, because I saw something that was really, really dope. I mean, there's been a lot, like crazy amounts of things that have been posted. A lot of good, a lot of bad. There was a post that everyone's pretty familiar with the Giving Tree, the Shel Silverstein Giving Tree story, but they used the image of the front cover.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The tree where it's turned over and it's basically handing over an apple to one of the kids, right? So the Giving Tree is bent over like this, and then they have another kid on the other side that's not receiving anything, right? And then they're like, okay, equality. So they do something to create an equal disperse to both children, and the kid on the right side is still kind of not getting what he needs. And then they created equity where they gave him so much of a lift that he was able to then reach up to the tree and get something from the tree, right? But then they added one and said, destroying the system and recreating the system. And now all of a sudden the tree, instead of bending over to one side, is standing up straight so that everybody has an equal part in it. And that's really the case. Okay. So there's a lot of people that have a lot of anger when it comes to equity in terms of whether or not a Black person or a person of color receives additional support to get the equal opportunities that other people get. We see that in the sport that we cover on the Pillaging Podcast in football. They're having the conversation about Black coaches and Black GMs. And they're trying to convince people to give more interviews to them, right? And so they're creating this system in which they will encourage franchises to interview these people more often, right? If you interview at least 2 people of color, then you will get this in return. And that is essentially their version of equity, right? They're like trying to help to get more interviews for these coaches and GMs of color. But the system is incorrect in the first place. When you have an entire league that is completely run and overseen by one group of people, then the disadvantages are always going to occur, right? And I guess I feel like that post really captured that. And maybe that helps people to understand, like, you're so angry because now, after years and years and years of not giving people the equal opportunity and taking away from them, you're so angry that now they're getting an extra hand, or they're being given additional support to just get them to the same level where you are. Well, you're angry because you don't understand that your system put them in that place in the first place. You're angry because you don't recognize that so many things were taken away from that culture, from those people, for years and years and years, that put them in the place where now they need additional supports. So if you're so angry, you should be demanding to change the system as well. And that goes and takes us right back to the same place where we started, which is this systematic racism that we see in law enforcement in other places. If you want us to stop asking for equality and equity, then change the system so that it no longer has to be asked for. Make the system equal for everyone. Don't fucking complain because now somebody's getting additional support. When you see people get picked out for college because they have cultural backgrounds and you're angry about it, that's not our fault. That's your fault. Because you created the system that now has to force the hand of those colleges to make sure that they include us. We didn't put ourselves where we are. That system put us where we are. You took parents out of the home. You arrested people. You put them away for years for drugs and whatnot. You put them in communities where they could not improve their life. They could not grow and become more fruitful. That system created that problem, created that issue. Okay? It's no secret to why we have places that are called ghettos, why we have projects. Okay? You force people in there. And then you're concerned or you're mad or you're upset because then now they're an issue or they become a problem. That's the shit that we gotta recognize, man. That's the shit that people gotta be open to and they gotta fucking see for themselves. When that system changes, when we stop treating people differently, when we stop taking people's fathers away from them and allowing them to have an intact home and an intact life, then you will start to see those people progress where they no longer need that additional help. But it won't change until that system changes. And that's what people are asking for. That's what people are begging you for. And they've been begging you for in a very polite and calm way for years. So that's all I got to say to that. Maybe that's a little long-winded, but that
needed to be said, man. Needed to be said, man. Guys, it was remarkable having this conversation with you. Obviously, it doesn't end here. We'll continue to fight the good fight and talk amongst each other and share our ideas. And hopefully our listeners appreciated this, even if you're not completely open to it. Again, hopefully we created some cognitive dissonance for you guys. And we appreciate you giving us the opportunity and giving us the chance to speak maybe about some things that you don't entirely agree with. But take away what you want. But please, we ask that you do at least consider it and think about it. And before we get out of here, I want to remind you, the system is not broken. It was built this way. We have to change it. Love you guys. Again, thanks for tuning in.
Too, brother.
Thanks for tuning in to the Crow's Nest, guys. Remember, from here, you can see all things. Until next time, I'm Kenny.
Polly.
I'm your boy, Chet.
And I'm Bobby.
We out here. You've been listening to the Crow's Nest Podcast on the Crow's Nest Podcast Network. I'll clean that up in post. Great show, guys.